The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
There you have it. The judge in the Karen Read murder trial today declared a mistrial after jurors were unable to reach a unanimous verdict.
Moments later, we saw Read embrace her father right there, perhaps a moment of relief. But this case is far from over. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office says they do intend to retry the case. Thanks for being with us tonight. For Canton Confidential, I'm J.C. Monahan.
And I'm Glenn Jones. A status conference is already scheduled for later this month to begin the process of another trial. But for now, after 5 days of deliberations, this chapter of the Karen Read saga has come to an end. An end
with no justice for John O'Keefe's family. The jury has been released. The courthouse demonstrators have left. We, however, are not going anywhere. Canton Confidential will continue this week because there is so much still to discuss.
We have team coverage for you tonight. Our Kirsten Glavin and John Maroney have been covering this trial from the beginning. We're going to send things out to start to John, who brings us everything you need to know from inside court on the final day.
Glenn, it's not what people have been expecting, but a mistrial has been declared, which means this case is not over.
Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
A mistrial in the Karen Read murder trial, with a jury unable to reach a verdict. Judge Beverly Cannoni reading a second jury note after saying it was deadlocked.
The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs.
The judge tried unsuccessfully to break the jury impasse by issuing the Tui Rodriguez dynamite charge. The defense supported the move. The prosecution did not.
I would submit that they have not done a thorough deliberation up to this point.
They have fundamental disagreements about what the evidence means, and it's a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of lack of understanding.
Read hugged her father and family in the courtroom after the mistrial was declared. John O'Keefe's family left the courthouse without speaking to reporters. In a statement, Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morsey thanked them for their commitment and dedication to the process. The DA says he will move to retry the case.
I don't know that any jury is going to be able to reach a conclusion of guilt.
Defense attorney John Swamley experienced a mistrial at Norfolk Superior Court as well.
If they can't get a conviction now, what is to say they're going to be able to get a conviction next time?
Now, the jury was taken from the courthouse here in Dedham for the last time this afternoon. The clerk's office tells us that their names will not be released because this trial ended in a mistrial. Live in Dedham, John Maroney, NBC 10 Boston.
John, thank you.
Let's send things out to Kirsten Glavin next. She's live in Dedham with the reaction from today's developments on multiple sides of this case.
Yeah, J.C. Glenn, this was a case that captured an audience from all over the world. Now, Karen Read did not comment as she was leaving court this afternoon, but her supporters have been very vocal. Karen Read and her defense team leaving Norfolk Superior Court after the news of a mistrial, speaking briefly in the rain.
This is what it looks like when you bring false charges against an innocent person. The Commonwealth did their worst. They brought the weight of the state based on spurious charges, based on compromised investigation and investigators, and compromised witnesses.
Read's attorneys saying this isn't the end.
I want to send a message to all of her supporters out there. Your support was invaluable.
Across the street, cheering, but also some mixed reactions from those in the Free Karen Read movement after hearing Judge Cannoni announcing the jury was at an impasse.
I don't know what these jurors are hung up on. There's no way the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt any of the charges, the major charges or the lesser charges.
My initial expression was automatic, not guilty. But as we learned this case, nothing happens the way it's supposed to happen. So am I satisfied with the mistrial right now? Yes. But do I want more? Absolutely.
For some, it was an outcome that was expected after learning the jury was deadlocked on Friday.
We accept the hung jury, even though that's not the outcome we were hoping for. We knew guilty was never on the table. It was never going to be convicted. This case is a travesty of justice and a mockery of justice.
Adding they don't believe the Commonwealth will follow through on a retrial.
I'm happy for her in terms of, like, she's not going to see any other trial again. They're not going to retry this case.
As for what's next, they say regardless, they're not going anywhere.
Oh, we'll be back. We'll be back. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've never met Karen, but I love Karen, and Karen could be any one of us.
Now, it's important for us to note that when a mistrial here was declared, there were no demonstrators against the Free Karen Read movement outside of the courthouse. JC, Glenn.
Thank you, Kirsten. We're joined now by Michael Coyne, Dean at the Massachusetts School of Law. Michael, let's talk about simply your reaction. We heard a lot of people outside reacting, and what about you?
Well, after the last couple days, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, and especially after the notes that we saw over the last couple days, which were extremely well written and thought out and showed the deep divide that the jury has, just like the rest of the population in Massachusetts and beyond, where people are polarized with respect to this case and her guilt or innocence. So it's not surprising where we're at today. I think it is surprising based on where we thought we were at the end of all the evidence and the closing arguments.
Given the way the judge handled this, sending the jury back late last week and again today with the Tui Rodriguez instructions, do you feel confident the jury had sufficient time to reach a verdict?
I do, because remember, they had 8 weeks of trial where they took in all the evidence. They had given it consideration individually before they decided to sit and meet and really talk about the case and review anything further. And the notes, again, indicate how deeply divided they were. The fact is that some of them, to their core, believed that she was guilty, and some of them, to their core, believed that the government had not met their burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't think that was ever going to change. If they stayed another few days or a week or more, the jury conveyed that to the judge in very clear and explicit terms, and she accepted that.
Yeah. All right, Michael, stay there because, of course, we have so much more to talk about. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
And when we come back, we'll be joined by Katherine Loftis and our Sue O'Connell. That's when we come back.
And a little later, we have reaction from one of the most talked about witnesses during this trial, Trooper Michael Proctor. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are joined now by local attorney Katherine Loftis, also known on TikTok for Note My Objection, and of course our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell.
All right, so you've helped bring context to so many key moments during this trial.
Mm-hmm.
What was the final moment like inside the courtroom?
Well, as we went in for the final moment, which we didn't know was the final moment, but I can pretty much say I think we knew it was the final moment. The air in the room was very heavy. The stress that we had felt the other times we got called back also was much, much more amplified. You know, it's funny, they say they're coming back for a question. That's just what they say. It doesn't mean it's a question. So we keep tweeting, well, they're coming back for the question. It happened to actually be they were coming back to say we were deadlocked for the final time. So it was just really heavy. The jurors really had, each and every one of them, you could just see the burden of what they went through. One juror who I had not noticed before was emotional. Other people had reported she'd been emotional. She was crying during this portion of it. And of course, the O'Keefe and the Reed family and supporters, and of course, Karen Reed herself. It was all just very, very heavy. And even the Judge Cannoni,
sure,
I just think she felt it. There was a sense of exhaustion that I got from Beverly Cannoni.
That's the word I was going to use just following up, Katherine, with you, is that the district attorney's office has said they are intending to retry this. We heard some Karen Reed supporters outside saying, of course they're not going to. This is done. This is done. This was 9 weeks of very hard work on top of all the hard work that was done for the 2+ years since John O'Keefe's death. But there's money involved also. In your opinion, where are we going from here in terms of the district attorney's office, and what do they need to do to pivot if they want to get a full 12-person conviction?
As you said, I'm not surprised that they're going to retry it. The Commonwealth believes that Karen Read is guilty, and you have the outside, secondary issue that really they've been accused of the office themselves, the law enforcement, everybody involved of this cover-up. So I think they have sort of a twofold goal of the next case. I do think they need to shorten it. I think one of the many problems that the Commonwealth had was that they really focused too much on the defense theory. I think they need to really, on the front end, maybe call a few witnesses, 1 or 2 police officers, 1 or 2 civilians, all the extras that we don't need. Focus on what the evidence they think of the strength of the case is. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in a special prosecutor to second seat Adam Lally, that they can take witnesses together. Someone that you need a little bit, I think, stylistically, someone to go toe-to-toe with whoever it's going to be, David Yannetti. Who knows if Alan Jackson will stay on or if you want. Obviously, as you said, this costs a lot of money to retry a case like this. So I think that both sides are going to take some time, tweak what they did the first time around, and we'll see which way it comes out.
One thing we know the jurors reviewed was they wanted to know more about the search, the collection of the evidence at the Alberts property. So we know a lot of stuff they didn't seem to care about just because they didn't ask for more information or seek more information. So I think that's a clue to your point that all this other defending of the alleged other people that they didn't know about didn't seem to connect with them. It was about the evidence.
We should take a moment to talk about the notes from the jury in this case, particularly today, which I found to be so articulate and kind of full of colorful language. We'll put it on the screen here. I won't read it because you heard the judge read the note a little bit earlier on. Sue, I guess I want to ask you about the eloquence of this and what it told you when you listened to the judge read them.
So this was the first trial I've covered, but I have watched trials and I've heard jurors' notes be very simple, like we can't come to a decision or can we see more of this? This was really the narrative that I think people were looking for ADA Lally to give us. Like, here's what's happening. They were eloquent. They obviously, I think it's clear that the person who was the foreperson has some legal background because he was hitting on all the notes that a judge would want to hear. We're exhausted, not tired, but we've exhausted. We can't come to a decision. And also, I think there's a bit of a way to try and protect someone on the jury. Like, we don't know if it was one person, 2 people, 5 people.
I was going to put you on the spot because we have like 2 seconds left. But the way it read to me sounded like more than one person.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I read that, yes. I think that it was probably more split than anybody expected. And it's hard to know. I mean, it's hard to know what the exact numbers are. We're really just speculating. But to me, that didn't feel like a note that was just one holdout.
But I think he was being diplomatic. I think he was protecting someone.
All right. Sue, Katherine, thank you. We're answering more of your questions when we come back and talking about what comes next.
Trooper Proctor, Kathy Curran from NBC 10. We'd like to ask you some questions. Do you think your actions impacted the outcome of the trial?
Get off of our lawn. Right?
I'm not on your lawn. I'm on the street. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
I fully support my husband. Karen Read is a murderer.
You support your husband?
That was the lead investigator in the case, Trooper Michael Proctor, and his wife reacting today after the judge in the Karen Read murder trial declared a mistrial. That's our NBC 10 Boston investigators who were at their home to see if they had anything that they wanted to say.
Michael Coyne and Katherine Loftis are back with us because on this day we need 2 legal minds.
For sure.
Let's get to some of our viewer questions. This one is from Julie, who writes in, how many times can a case be retried? Maybe, Michael, we'll start with you.
As many until it takes till they get a verdict. The fact is that what we have here is a mistrial after one. They'll try her again. As a practical matter, they're not going to try her till the end of time.
Right.
But they will, in fact, likely continue to try until they reach a verdict one way or the other.
We have another question. This one is from Linda, who asks, why wasn't the jury polled? And I think we were all waiting for that, to hear how many were, as we were just talking, Katherine, going for not guilty and how many for guilty.
Well, I think it's interesting. I was thinking a little bit about it on my ride here. And maybe you don't want the jury polled, because I think if we can just get the rumors, a speculation about it's this way or that way, do we, if it's 10-2 guilty, does the defense really want that out there? Or if it's 11-1 not guilty, does the Commonwealth really want that out there? I'm not sure that it really actually helps anything in the long run, because either way, the case needs to be retried. Does it really matter how many people you've convinced? And I also think that there was an order that came down from the court that the jury list was not going to be released because it didn't come to a verdict. So I think there is also some awareness about the intensity of the media scrutiny surrounding this and concerns about people's safety, or, potentially harassment, depending on which way the verdict was going. So it's interesting.
You might have to scold me here, because I really want to know what happened inside that room. And of course, jurors can voluntarily come forward, even though we don't know who they are from the court.
Everybody wants to know. That's why we would like to have known what the split is, because there's already all these suggestions online about, it was 10-2 this way, or 6-6, or 7-5. No one knows. Right. And until a juror comes forward and says, this is where we were at, and this is what the vote was, no one's going to know. And it's all speculation, and we have to really dismiss it and try to give the jury some space here, because it's difficult to stand in judgment of someone else.
All right, here's another viewer question. There have been so many really good ones. This one is no exception. How will they make sure to find an unbiased jury, since the Karen Read trial is all over the news and impossible by now that people didn't pick their side in this story? Catherine?
I think it's interesting, because we actually had this same conversation about picking a jury in April, that people were so sure we could not pick a jury. I think people would be surprised. All of us who are consumed by this, who are following it every day, it seems like there's no way you could find jurors that don't know anything about this. But I think, in fact, you can find a fair jury. It might take a little bit more. You might have to go through 200, 300 like you did the first time. There's always the possibility they could take jurors. They could move the venue. They could take jurors from another county. So I don't think it will be a problem finding it. Just might take a little bit more work.
I was with two people on the beach this weekend, and they wanted to know, who is this Karen Read you speak of? They had not been influenced by the case or the media. They're unplugged. They could care less about Canton Confidential and all the rest of it.
Michael.
Michael, Catherine, thank you. You can still send in your questions. Our experts are going to continue to answer them.
Michael's not coming back.
Here's the email address, canton.confidential@nbcuni.com. We'll be right back.
Not happy, but not upset. Could have been worse.
She didn't do it, and I want to know what made them think that she did do it.
Was I surprised? No. There's one person holding out, at least, perhaps two, whatever.
It's definitely a little complicated that it was a mistrial, but she's definitely not guilty in at least our eyes.
Just some of the reaction we're hearing out of Canton tonight, a town forever changed by this trial.
We're joined once again by our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell.
All right, Sue, you gave 2 months of your life to this trial. It basically ended in a tie.
Right.
How are you feeling about the value of the time that you've given to this?
Well, I'll tell you, Glenn and JC, I really talked to so many people. And again, as Kirsten has pointed out, most of them were Karen Read supporters, because that's who were there. But they were so surprised at the process of our judicial system. And I don't mean this in a critical way, because we live in a very complicated society and government is very complicated. But they learned so much about our process, like how charges get brought, how things get investigated. And I've been challenging people, even if they're not from Canton, to find out how the money you pay, your tax dollars, your city and municipal tax dollars and town tax dollars, when they, people like to just sign the money away to the police departments because we support our police and fire departments. Are they being trained? What are the ethical standards? How are people being supported? Now, these are questions that the Black Lives Matter movement has been challenging us to look at for quite a while now, and I think that people are finally understanding that we need to know how the people who protect us, many of whom do an excellent, superior job, but just know where your money goes when it comes to your police departments. And I think that's one of the takeaways from this trial for most people watching.
It's also going to be about the money in the prosecutor's office, will it not be? Because there had to have been a lot spent on this trial, and nobody won. If you think about it, I don't think anybody could have walked out of that courtroom saying, well, that was a good 2 years plus 9 weeks of trial worth
And not
it.
just the trial, but also the state police overtime, the court police overtime. There's a lot of money that went into this. So I think we need to hold our leaders accountable.
All right, Sue, thank you. We'd like to leave you tonight with a reminder of the victim in all of this, John O'Keefe.
It's been almost 2.5 years since John was killed. It was January 29th of 2022. The 46-year-old served Massachusetts as a veteran of the Boston Police Department. He was a loving son, friend, and guardian for his niece and nephew. We will be back here tomorrow night once again at 7 o'clock. We hope you will join us then. In the meantime, we remember John O'Keefe.